A stereo compressor off of the master mix, it's very much like the rug in The Big Lebowski. It really ties the room together. Hi, I'm Lauren Bregister, and I was tasked to mix a Punjabi pop song from one of the viewers on my YouTube channel. And so here it is, a mix of a Punjabi pop song. So I did a lot of research into the style of music and what goes on with the different tracks and stuff like that. So here's a rough mix that was given to me. So you hear that before. And so here's the after version. So in this video, you'll see how I get from those basic rough mix tracks to that final version. I'm going to start with the vocals and move through the percussion, the melodic instruments, and then build the whole mix together. And so just follow along, and I'll put chapter markers and enjoy. So the first thing I did was to try to take note of what all these different songs, different versions of the Punjabi pop music have in common, and have a really bright, edgy vocal that sort of sits on top of the music. So with that sitting on top of the music, it can be affected. There's a lot of like auto-tune type pitch correction sometimes used, and other effects, but it's definitely sitting on top, like definitely in your face and bright and clear. So all those vocal flourishes and stuff come through. So that's sort of my main goal here, is to get those coming through. Now the other instruments, nice, crisp, clean, not overly affected, percussive sounds, and beautiful melodies on different instruments. And so I want to make sure those pop out while keep the vocals sitting there in the center. So when I'm mixing a song, I'm going to start with the vocal track. So typically I might start with the drums and sort of build a bass. The overall instruments sound level-wise okay. So we're going to get through the processing of those in a little bit, but first I'm going to just focus my attention on the vocals, because the vocals are the most important thing of the song. So I'll start with the vocals, and then I'll do some more processing on the vocals at the end. I'll do the bulk of the heavy lifting here in the beginning with the EQ and compression and the additional processing that I want to add. So first thing I'm going to do is the client told me that the song was in B natural minor, which is a nice boost. So, and it's in 90 beats per minute, which allows me to synchronize delays if I choose to add them to different instruments. I can do that. So first thing I'm going to do, I have Melodyne here at the top. I've already processed that in Melodyne, so I can pitch correct it with that. But I can start with just a regular Auto-Tune. So if I'm going to go into pitch, I have an older version of Auto-Tune, because it's like Call of Duty, where they come out with a new version like every year and expect you to pay for it. Or more like Madden. It's more like Madden, because they change like one or two things and then want you to buy a new one every year. So I'm going to change it to alto tenor. Retune speed, we'll keep it at that. It's a little quick, but for pop music it might work. Let me go in and change the key to B minor. All right. So, and I'm just going to play the track here and make sure it doesn't, give me any weird notes if the vocalist is closer to the wrong note, but he seems fairly spot on. Let's check it out. All right, so that seems to work pretty well. So I'm just going to turn that off. And then so, my processing on the vocal chain is, I'm probably going to start with just an EQ. Maybe take out some resonances, add some air and stuff like that. It's going to go in, and I'm going to add an EQ to that. So let's see here. I have my Fab Filter Pro Q3. That's just a pretty great EQ overall. Now, one thing I'll do on almost every single track, except for the kick drum track, is that I will apply a high pass filter on almost everything except for kick and bass, and that includes vocals as well. Fairly steep, and let's just dial in that
ਅੱਜ ਫੇਰ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਪੈਰੀਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ
Because the reason why I do that high pass filtering, and that's the most important processing that you can use, is that if you apply that on everything except for the kick and bass, that leaves a lot of low end room. You know, the low mid stuff builds up really quickly on a lot of different instruments. You know, the more tracks you have. This one has a moderate amount of tracks, so I'm not too worried about the low mid build up in this song, but I have more tracks. I would certainly worry about that. But the high pass filtering makes everything a lot cleaner, especially in the final result. So I have that. Let me find where some of that resonance in his voice is.
ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ
So it's a little edgy there. So I'm going to do a pretty tight Q on that. Bring it down. Tighten it a little more. And then just boost a little high end air on that.
ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ
So that takes a lot of that edge out of there, some of that shrillness to it. So next thing I'm going to do is add some compression to it. So what I'm going to do is what I oftentimes do with pop vocals. I don't want to sit in one spot. Is I will apply two compressors or three compressors in a serial compression format. So it's more gentle, so it doesn't sound overly compressed, but it does allow it to sort of sit in one spot. So I'm going to use this Arouser, which is one of my favorite compressors. It's sort of a newer plug-in version of the Distressor by Empirical Labs. And I love the Distressor as an analog compressor, and this is the software equivalent to that. It's more modern. I'm going to do a low ratio of 2:1 here. Medium attack and release.
ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ
So it attenuates about 3 dB. I'm going to do this sort of same thing. I just copy it and then make some adjustments. So I don't have to worry about the attack and release and ratio.
ਪੈਰੀਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ
And I'll do a third one for the serial compression.
ਪੈਰੀਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ
All right, let me unsolo that here. It sounds in the track a little bit.
ਪੈਰੀਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ
Okay, so there's a couple things that I can do to even further enhance this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use this Noveltech Vocal Enhancer. So if I go to, it's under Plugin Alliance, Noveltech Vocal Enhancer. And this is sort of an oral exciter type effect, just to sort of add some brightness and high end because it's very, sort of processed. So I'm going to just hear how it sounds.
ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ
And this makes it really pop out a lot more. So I'm going to go in, keep it there for the time being. I might go up and adjust it some more. If I want to add a little bit of air to that, because that gives me sort of that more high edge, sort of that throaty edge to it. If I want to add some air to it, who makes a good one here? Alosis has this Air EQ Premium, which is nice. Maybe not that one. That's just the whole full version of it. I'm going to choose to use the one that comes with the Slate Digital. So I go to Slate Digital, I open up the virtual mix rack. There we go. We got the virtual mix rack going. I get rid of all this crap. And I just want this air EQ. So I'm going to drop that on there and just add a little bit of air to it. So that sounds pretty great, especially for this style of music. One other thing I'm going to add is a de-esser. So I'm going to go under Plugin Alliance, and there's a de-esser that I liked to use here. Which one was it? SPL de-esser. Let me scroll down here. There we go, SPL de-esser. I'm going to grab that, and there's just a... just turn on the S reduction. So I'll smooth out some of that edge as well. So I'll keep those on there. Let's just add a little bit of reverb to it. When I deal with the vocals, I usually typically like to add a plate reverb. So I'm going to create a send to a new track, a stereo. We'll call it vocal plate verb. There's a couple of choices I can use. Any plate plugin will sound pretty good. I'm going to Command S to solo safe it, and I'm going to drop this lustrous plates on there. So now we have I like that. I might want to add a little bit of time to it, but in addition to adding time, I'm also going to thin it out. Don't be afraid to EQ the output of your reverbs, because there's a lot of mid-range stuff in there that I just kind of want to get rid of. I don't want to make it muddy. I want to make it clean and airy. So let's hit play here. So that's going to make that plate reverb a lot cleaner sounding. So I'm going to go in, I may add a touch of air to that. So there's a lot more space in there, a lot more room for the vocal when I just take out some of that mid-range stuff. So all right, sounds pretty great. Now there's a couple of other vocal processing things that I like to do on pop vocals or rock vocals, R&B vocals, that kind of thing. One of them is going to add a let's see, I'm going to add a delay to it, so I'll call it lead vocal echo. Command click solo safe that. I'll move down below the plate reverb. And let's dial it in. Oh, I got a bunch of delays here. I might use Echo Boy, which is made by Sound Toys. You can get this effect with a lot of different delays, so it's not specific to this one. First thing I'm going to do is make sure that the mix is set to 100% wet, because I'm using a send to it. And a little bit of feedback, a little bit of high cutoff, a little bit of low cutoff. And so it's studio tape style. let's hear how it sounds just, with this setup. So I'm going to make it a little more high cut on that. There we go. Yeah, a touch more feedback. I like that sound. So a question often is asked, how do I know the delay is enough or too much? One sort of standard rule for that is you don't specifically hear it while the vocal's playing, but you feel like something's missing when it's gone. Like that level, but I'm going to add a little more high cut. Now, a lot of times what I do is also take the output of that echo and I send that to the same reverb, so there's not some weird dry echo on there, and maybe even have more reverb on there. All right, so the vocal's starting to sound really great. And the last thing I add is a little bit of a pitch shifter. That adds sort of this magic to it. New Synth stereo, call it vocal pitch shift. Again, solo safe it. And, any sort of pitch shifter will accomplish the same thing. What I'm probably going to wind up using is the micro shift. This emulates sort of a famous program that was in the Eventide H3000 is sort of, its style. So maybe I'll just grab a default here. Microshift Classic. That's for that classic microshift sound. Mix set to 100%. And I'm going to turn the reverb and the echo off just so I can hear just this effect on the vocal track.
ਅੱਜ ਫੇਰ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਪੈਰਿਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ.
Now, you don't have to use a whole lot of it. Now, I'm probably going to be messing with that level for the whole song. And let's see how that sounds.
ਅੱਜ ਫੇਰ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਪੈਰਿਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ.
All right, so that sounds pretty great. So now I'm going to move on to the drums. I'm going to start with the kick drum here. And let's hear what we have. It's not, a rock song that has the kick drum going through the whole thing. It comes in and out. It's well arranged. So I'm going to go in here, go to my EQ first. And let's just hear how it sounds. Solo it. So I want it to pop through a little more. I'm going to wind up, adding some more of that attack back in there. And I'm going to kind of sort of keep the low end up, so I'm going to bring some of this low mid stuff down. Bring that down, narrow it a little bit. And, maybe boost the lows a little bit. And so that's going to cut through a lot more in the mix for sure. So if I want to add a little more like low end, I can go in and choose this sort of sub synth here. So I'm going to go under Plugin Alliance, BX sub synth. So I can go in here and I can even add more like low harmonics to the sound. So I'm going in here and turn up this. Yeah, you can feel that a little bit more, which I like. And the last thing I'm going to do, and this is, really handy, especially when you start compressing stuff and you want stuff to cut through the mix a little more. So if I play it back, you can hear this. But I want to sort of bite in a little bit more. I want that attack to come through a little bit more. So I'm going to use this SPL transient designer. So that's under Plugin Alliance. Any other sort of transient designing plugin can do that for you. So you use up this SPL transient designer plus a sidechain filter apparently. And so this allows you to reduce or increase the amount of attack to something. So if I hear just that kick with that attack on there, you can see it cutting through a lot more. Off, on. So yeah, that makes a big difference. So let's hear how that sounds in the track. Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. So let's jump into the snare track here. All right, so again, like I do with almost all my other tracks here, I'm going to start with an EQ. I'm going to just check how this looks on the meter. I see some low frequency stuff, so I'm going to definitely apply a high pass filter. Again, to tidy up that low end. Set it fairly tight, something like that. Yeah. I'll tighten a little bit more, and then I want to make sure that that attack comes through. Because in a pop song, you definitely want the attack of the kick and snare to come through and all the percussion elements for sure. So then I'm going to kind of compress it because I want to have more sustain. It kind of, dies out, and I feel like I want to hear more sustain on that snare drums. And make it a little bit more in your face. So a compressor will do that, of course, at the expense of the transient, but we can fix that with the transient shaper again at the end. So I'm going to go in, I'm just going to smack it pretty hard. So let's have we'll play with the attack time. Pretty fast release time though. Fast attack, fast release. Adjust the output. Off. I'm going to slow the attack down a little bit because I want a little bit more of the transient to come through. And then once that's applied to it, I can go in and sort of add I can add transient with that compressor. That compressor actually has attack modifications to actually increase the transient with just this compressor. There we go. Maybe bring that output down a little bit. See how that sounds in the track. See if it's snapping through but has enough sustain. Bring this volume down a little bit. So at this point, I'm going to add a stereo compressor across the master track. So I'm going to go in and dive in and add. Do I have enough compressors? Let's go in and add just. Let's go to that townhouse bus compressor. Let's see if there's a good preset to start up with. Mix bus start easy. I like the sound of that. No, I want easy. I want like mix start. Master glue. All right, that works pretty well. It's sort of, a stereo compressor off the master mix. It's very much like the rug in The Big Lebowski. It really ties the room together. All right, so now let's go and add these snaps, which sort of function as snare drum. I have snap and snaps, which I've labeled as such. One sort of singular. And I really just only wind up EQing that a little bit. So I'm going to go in and just apply just a touch of EQ to that. Just make it pop out in the mix a little bit. So this is a stereo track. I might play with one thing here. I'm going to see if I can make him a little wider. So I'm going to go under my plugin alliance. Or just BX this BX, is it Stereo Maker? I can adjust the width of it so I can make it wider. So I can have the snaps sort of a little wider and sort of the snare hit in the center. Snaps, snare. So I can create some interesting stereo things with that. So I kind of like that a little bit. And it's super clipping, so I'm just going to attenuate the output here a little bit. I should attenuate the left and right. Pretty much the same. What the hell is this? Oh, output pan? I don't want that. Output level down. ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ All right. So then we have snaps. Let's see what to do with the snaps. So that.
ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ
So the first thing I'm going to do with the snaps, I'm going to solo that, and I'm going to go in and use, again, the Plugin Alliance. These are all the plugins you can get with their Mixed Master subscription, which I bought a little bit a while ago, so you'll see me using it a lot. So I have the SPL. They have this Deverb Plus, so it's designed to take the ambience out of things. So if I want to take the reverb out of those snaps, I can use just this, which applies some sort of like gating, I think. That way I can kind of rely on my own reverb. So there's still some snaps in there, or some reverb in there, but you know, it's a lot less prominent. So in a lot of this, those snaps are the main percussion element. You know, in this section, that's pretty much all you hear percussion-wise. So we want to make that more prominent. Let's go in and EQ that here. I can make it a little brighter. Do a high-pass filter on that, because that will definitely contribute to quite a bit of mud on that. Let's do that sort of high-pass filter on there. I just want to hear what the adding body to that sounded like. So it cuts through a little bit better. Again, let's see if we can stereo widen that. So I'm going to copy that stereo spread plugin on there. Stereo Maker. That's too much. Let's see how that sounds in the track. Actually, you know what I'm going to do with this first snaps is I'm going to put those in the center. So it goes center wide, center wide. So let's narrow that, actually, those first snaps. All right. We'll keep with that for the time being. Let's jump into this hi-hat here. Let's open up the EQ, see what it looks like. Just add a little sizzle to that. Yeah. And you know, I can pan this around a little bit if I feel like it. Okay, with that sounding that way, I can go in And maybe add just a little bit of reverb to a couple of those things just to add some space. I'm going to make sure it's sort of not just to put in a little space, but I don't want it to make it prominent. I don't want it really specifically noticeable. So I'll start with a snare. Create a new track. We'll call it percussion verb. Perc verb. Create. Perc verb on. All right. Solo safe it. You go in and add a reverb to that. I'm going to use Revibe 2. That has an, good overall sort of, generic reverbs that sound pretty good. And go in and look at the presets. Maybe just like a medium bright room. We'll start with that, or maybe a medium neutral room. I'm going to change my mind on that one. I'm going to try the Verb Suites Classics. This comes with the Slate Everything Bundle subscription, which is, in my opinion, one of the best deals as far as audio goes. I'm going to go in and use a 480L, which is FG 480, since you don't have to license that. Rooms, there's a large wood room, which is a nice, neutral-ish sort of sounding reverb. So. Let me add the snaps to that a little bit. Just option drag. Sounds pretty good. I'm going to add a little more to that. Yeah, it's not a bright reverb, which I like. Add that to the same thing to the snaps. And the hi, yeah, a little bit of the hi-hat. Maybe just hear how that sounds. Let's solo all the percussion sounds. Let me group them. Bring the verb out of that. Command G. We'll call it percussion. So now I can solo them all at once. Reverb off. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. All right, so let's go with the bass. I'm going to solo bass. So I'm going to look at an EQ on that. So it's a very sort of pure sine wave sounding bass. Now, if I want to add a little more character to that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another one of these plugin alliance plugins called the Black Box. And that allows me to add, some saturation to it. And I'm going to pop up both windows so I can just see what the how this is affecting the frequency content. I'll just put the frequencies down here. Just low distortions, low saturation. Actually, there's a preset here that I started with called Smash the Bottom. That's too much saturation. I can just dial it down a little bit. So it makes the bass a little bit bigger by adding these harmonics you can see when it's turned on. Let me move this up into the screen a little bit. With it on, off, fewer high harmonics. So I want to take up a little bit more space with it is what I'm trying to do. And the next thing I'm going to do, let's hear how it sounds in the mix. So I'm going to put a little bit of compression on there. I'm going to use against the Plugin Alliance. Scroll down. This Purple Audio, so it's their Purple Audio's sort of 1176 ripoff, and go in and just sort of dial that in. Let's maybe if there's a preset to start off with. Bass Tamer, I like the sound of that. That might be what we need. A little too much compression. I can dial down the input a little bit. I'm looking for like about 3 dB of attenuation on there. Gives a little bit of a rounder sound, a little more even. If you look at the track, it's very even, but this gives it a rounder sound. So that with the I don't really have any EQ going on. I can move the EQ over here. I'm not going to EQ it because since it's very sine wave heavy, I'm going to actually adjust the strength of different notes if I actually try to add more low into that, if I try to EQ it, which is not what I want. If I wanted to add a little bit more harmonics, I could do that. Because any boost is going to affect those frequencies a little bit differently. So I want to be very even across all those notes. So that sounds pretty cool. So that's a bass, and there's a few other elements before we get to the melodic instruments. We have this noise, and which sort of functions as cymbals. So we have a backwards one, I called it reverse noise. And then the forward noise. For starters, let's see what the frequencies look at that like that. I have an idea of what I want to do with that. I'll make it more interesting. Let's put that on here. Let's do again. Put a high pass filter on that. There's not a whole lot of low frequencies, but I still want to make sure that I have that clean low frequency range for the bass and kick to come through. Maybe a little bit of air, a little bit of edge. So I think I'm going to apply the same thing to the bottom one since it seems to be the same noise. But one thing I'm going to do is I can make it a little duller, make it a little darker. Because when I hear those together, I want a bigger sort of difference between the two. So you really get that, rather than one forward, one backward, I want it to like really build into something. So I want it to be sort of darker than to blow up into a brighter sound. Whoa, what the hell did I hit? Whoops. Excuse me. Let's do that over again, since I hit something weird on my mouse. Make it darker, quite a bit darker. Hear them both together. Maybe a little less dark, but I like that effect. Now, another thing I'm going to do, I can use that Stereo Maker plugin, and let's go to the Plugin Alliance, BX Stereo Maker. Any stereo with the plugin will be able to do this. What I want to do is I want to narrow the reverse sound and sort of widen the forward sound. So let's copy that over here. And the top one, I'm going to widen it. So it sort of goes like this and then spreads right when it opens up. So let's hear how that sounds in the track. It might be a little bit too narrow on that first one. I don't want to be super exaggerated, but just something subtle that you don't specifically notice, but you feel it and it makes it sound awesome. Hear it coming again. I'm gonna make that high frequency a little louder, or that forward. A little louder. And I'll make the backward a little bit louder too. Okay, cool. Now let's go into these fills here. So I'm going to sort of compress them a little bit, I think, or a lot. I'm going to put an EQ on there, but I'm going to hear what the compression does first before I EQ it. Solo, and then that's the EQ again. Use that rouser. And there's usually like some good like drum room sort of crushing sounds. I'm just going to hit rivet, which is the equivalent of the nuke setting on the Distressor. I want more transient to come through. I can bring up that attack modification. Without. With. Okay, nice. Just a gentle low pass filter on there. And here we go. Let play. Bypass. Unbypass. Nice. I'm going to change this to minutes and seconds. So with that, now you notice a little bit of a pop at the end because of the way it's edited. I'm just going to trim those all down a little bit. So play a tiny fade. So you can see there's a little bit of a pop that occurs at the end. So I just do a little tiny fade there. Get rid of that click in there. As opposed to this one, which is the same thing. Let's get rid of that click. Just a tiny bit. Just a teeny tiny fade. A little faderoo. It looks like I've already did that to some of these. Little fade. Little fade. There we go. So now let's hear, that in context with the song. Let me hear if I can widen that a little bit. Again, with that plugin Alliance BX Stereo Maker. Widen it some. Maybe a touch too much. Maybe just 50%. Let's hear how it sounds mono, just for. Nope, a little bit wider. Nice. All right, so now let's start working on these harmonic instruments. The piano is sort of the main harmonic instrument, as well as that synth melody, that gated synth. I'm going to bring it up there to the top. Not to the top, but next to the low piano, so they kind of function in carrying the harmonic content. Low piano. It's a nice sound. It needs to be brighter and definitely high pass filtered. Now let's get to come through a little more with this. Yeah. I'm definitely going to compress that. I'm going to use something a little bit less drastic than your rouser. I'm going to go in. I'm going to use this Elysia compressor. Plug in Alliance. Elysia Alpha Mix. And so here's a threshold here. Let's break it down. That's attenuating about 4 dB. Let's compensate for that. So now it's sustaining. Let's go in and add some of that attack back in with that SPL. Well, with that SPL transient shaper, transient designer plus this thing. Too much. Something like that. Because I like using, these things as percussive elements. Or using the percussion of melodic instruments to help drive the song. Okay, so with this gated synth, it's a mono track. So let me just EQ it first. Solo it. EQ it. High pass filter it. And, it gets a little shrill over in this range. A little distracting, so I can narrow that and pull that out. And then I can use a stereo maker to sort of widen that since it's a mono synth. I want to make room for the vocal to sit there. So if I can take mono sources and widen them, then I'll make for a better, a cleaner vocal in the center. So let's see if what that stereo maker does to this mono sound. Plug in Alliance. Stereo maker. I like that because it leaves more of a hole for the vocal in the center. Let's. you'll see in some of these stops, a couple places I have it muted, so it sort of cuts out, so that sort of makes more of a clean stop in the music. So let's go with some of these melodic sounds. I'm going to start with this sort of horn melody. So these three different tracks, I have a sort of a horn, a string, and a flute sound. I'll start with a horn sound in here. So that carries a nice melody with it. So what I'm going to want to do is sort of make that pop out as much as possible. I'm going to go in and first we're going to apply an EQ to it. Again with a high pass filter. Always with the high pass filter on everything that's not kicking bass. And I can see the fundamental frequency right here. So this needs to pop similar to the vocal. And so I'm going to use a similar effect to it. But first I'm going to compress it, and then whoa, launched myself. So we'll compress it. Let me go in and use this arouser again. So that makes it more consistent throughout. Now here we're going to make it brighter. So if you remembered, I used that vocal enhancer on the vocal track. There's a similar effect by Noveltech. Kind of does the same thing, but for things that aren't vocals. So if I go into Plugin Alliance, scroll down to Noveltech, we have Noveltech characters. Going to do something similar to that. So I can make this more in your face. So now it, will cut through the mix a lot better. So I don't want that stomping all over the vocal track, so I'm going to, maybe pan it a little bit left. I'm going to make a delay for that horn. Let me create a new track and just add a little bit of a delay to make it a little bit more interesting. Horn delay, echo, horn echo. Solo safe it. Find a delay. Again, that echo boy. Make sure my mix is set to 100% wet. High cut. Pretty significant. Let's set the delay to ping pong. Let's hear that in the track. And so now we have the string melody, and this is the only place it happens in the song. You can see I have it panned a little bit to the right, sort of like this way, or I guess this way. So let's go in and EQ that up a little bit. Use that same sort of novel tech effect as well. I really want this to cut through. It's a beautiful melody. It's got a built-in delay to it, which is nice. Let's add that novel tech character to it as well. Yeah, I'm just gonna compress it just a little bit. I'm going to set it to like a 2-to-1 compression ratio. Nice. All right. So then let's add that novel tech character. Plug in Alliance. All right. That'll really make it cut through a lot better. So let's hear that in the track. Nice. So I'm going to go in and play with that flute a little bit. This might be tricky because this is sort of a main melodic sound. You know, it comes in at the beginning of the tune. So let's make it interesting. First off, high pass filter again, as always. Sure, we'll just save a preset for that. Maybe not as seep. So let's there's that. Let's go in and compress it. Wrong track. And let's use that Noveltech character on there. So I have that on this track. Bring the volume down a little bit. So that sort of brings the flutiness out of it. Let's hear it playing with the flute. So I'm going to use that horn echo on both of those tracks. Let's hear that flute. That might be a little much on the echo. All right, let's go in and hear how that sounds on the string, that delay. Nice. ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਮੈਕਾਂ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਵਾਵਾਂ All right. Too much delay. ਅੱਜ ਫੇਰ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਪੈਰਿਓ ਨਾਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ That sounds pretty nice. So let me jump into this high piano, and then we'll figure out what this vocal double's doing here. All right, so let me see what I want to do with that here. So first I'm going to start off with a, bring it up, make it bigger. EQ. And I'm going to use a stereo maker because I want to make that wider. For starters, I actually want to copy the settings. I like those the compressor settings on that original piano. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to use that as a starting point. I'm going to copy settings. Then go down here. I'm gonna actually use the stereo maker first. Plug in Alliance, so it'll be a stereo compressor on top of it. BX stereo maker. Yeah, nice. Got Elysia compressor, plug-in Alliance, Alpha Mix. Paste those settings from the original one. And then and if I want to bring some of that, transients back through, I was going to go grab that plug-in Alliance SPL Transient Designer Plus. I like that a lot. I want to make it a little wider. Before I get too far, I'm gonna. Where'd my vocal pitch shift and echo go? Over here. Put them next to the vocal. So I'm going to change the echo. I'm going to see if that sounds better with a ping pong on it. So add a little more width to it. I like the width that it adds. I'm going to bring it, just turn it down a little bit. So I'm going to go in here and hear how it sounds in those breaks. I like it. So I'm going to move that flute, which is panned to the left. You know, the horn's panned to the left as well. I'm going to pan that to the right. And then pan this string melody to the left-ish. So they're sort of on opposite sides, especially when they have two melodies going at the same time. reverb to that flute. It needs something. So maybe just another plate reverb. New track. Stereo, we'll call it melody verb. I feel like it needs to be a little wetter sounding. Let's go to reverb. I'm going to go with lustrous plates again. Again, that comes with the Slate Everything Bundle.
Yeah.
Sounds great. I'm just going to EQ it a little bit. Make it a little more airy, just like I did with the vocal for reverb. Let's hear how it sounds at the top.
ਅੱਜ ਫੇਰ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਪੈਰਿਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ.
Okay, so I think my mix is right where I want it to be. The last thing I would do is go through and add automation and maybe a few other special effects, but you can sort of get the gist of that because I would spend just another 2 hours just doing just automation. So let's play it from the top and hear how it sounds.
ਅੱਜ ਫੇਰ ਤੁਰ ਪਏ ਪੈਰਿਓਂ ਨਾ ਰਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦਾ ਯਾਦ ਦਿਲ ਗਲ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਬਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਆਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਗਈ ਬਰਬਾਦ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਖਬਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਾ ਗੇੜਾ ਸੋਹਣੀਏ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਪੱਕਾ ਏ ਰੁਲੀ ਜਵਾਨੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਰਨੀ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਾ ਗੇੜਾ ਸੋਹਣੀਏ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਪੱਕਾ ਏ ਰੁਲੀ ਜਵਾਨੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਰਨੀ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਮਹਿਕਾਂ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਵਾਵਾਂ ਮੁੜ ਮੁੜ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਚੇਤੇ ਗਲੀ ਤੇਰੀ ਦੇ ਮੋੜ ਵਾਲੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦੇਣ ਸਹਾਰਾ ਠੇਕੇ ਗਲੀ ਤੇਰੀ ਦੇ ਮੋੜ ਵਾਲੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦੇਣ ਸਹਾਰਾ ਠੇਕੇ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਮਹਿਸੂਸ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਹੈ ਤੁਰਨਾ ਪੈਰ ਪਏ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਾ ਗੇੜਾ ਸੋਹਣੀਏ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਪੱਕਾ ਏ ਰੁਲੀ ਜਵਾਨੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਰਨੀ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਾ ਗੇੜਾ ਸੋਹਣੀਏ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਪੱਕਾ ਏ ਰੁਲੀ ਜਵਾਨੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਰਨੀ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਲੋਕੀ ਪੂਜਣ ਰੱਬ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਬੂਹੇ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕਾਂ ਮੱਚਦੀ ਸੀਨੇ ਵਿਰਹਾਂ ਵਾਲੀ ਅੱਗ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਨਿਤ ਸੇਕਾਂ ਮੱਚਦੀ ਸੀਨੇ ਵਿਰਹਾਂ ਵਾਲੀ ਅੱਗ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਨਿਤ ਸੇਕਾਂ ਤੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਚੰਗੀ ਯਾਦ ਤੇਰੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਨਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਵੇ ਦਲਾਸੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਉਹ ਹਮਦਰਦ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਾ ਗੇੜਾ ਸੋਹਣੀਏ ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਪੱਕਾ ਏ ਰੁਲੀ ਜਵਾਨੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਰਨੀ ਕਦਰ ਤੇ ਬਣਦੀ ਏ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ
Okay, that sounds pretty great. There's a few things I would change. I brought the percussion up a little bit and the snare drum up a little bit more. And also listening back, I heard that this melody, this flute thing here, not the melody, but just this flute part here. Especially noticed it here. Now, it sounds a little bit late because of the articulation of the MIDI track. So if I wanted to nudge it up a little bit earlier, what I would do is I go into View here and go to Real-Time Properties. And I can go into Real-Time Properties here and shift that earlier in time non-destructively. Or rather than that, actually, that's just for MIDI tracks. Ignore what I just said. Let me hide that. Is just maybe nudge the whole thing back like 10 milliseconds. Delete that. I'm going to select all of that. I can go to nudge, and I can just say set this to 10 milliseconds. And if I hit minus, it nudges it backwards 10 milliseconds. And we'll hear if that sounds any better. Maybe another 10 milliseconds back. Option Shift Return. And then the minus key on my keyboard, another 10 milliseconds earlier. That sounds way better. All right, let's hear all that. I'm going to back one more time, percussion up just a little bit. The timing of that's better, and I think this is the final version here. So let's play back. Nice. And there you have it. So I would go in and do a little bit of further automation to it, and make a couple different versions, a vocal up version. So especially since I'm not a native speaker of the language, I want to make sure that, the audience can hear the level of the voice where it needs to be. So I'd make varying degrees of the vocal level. So this would be on the low side, and I would make maybe a 2 dB up or a 2.5 dB up on the vocals. But other than that, I like the way it sounds. I would just go in and do a little bit of automation with the melody instruments and the lead vocal, just to make sure that the song has a nice dynamic to it, especially with the intros and the instrumental breaks and that. But other than that, the song sits really well. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed it.